Ni hao. Hello and welcome to Falling Apart Podcast. We are a podcast loosely based on Leeds United. As you can tell, Ricardo is not doing the hosting duties today, and he is chuckling away in the background because where are you, Ricardo?
I'm in China. I'm in bed. I'm doing this for you in bed, listeners.
Do you want to do a time?
It's 10 past midnight where I am, 10 past 4 in the UK. I am on the 29th floor of a hotel in a city called Xi'an, and I have stayed up. I'm committed. I flew on Tuesday morning, so I've been here for 2 nights. So I'm still on UK time. So I had the horrific nightmare of paying £3.49 to listen to LUTV live last night.
Did you not get the visuals?
No, I didn't. I thank God. But
Surely you can pay for that on LUTV when you're in China.
I can't get my iPad to work, and I couldn't see my phone anyway. But I thought I'm going to try and sleep. But I listened to Bryn Law and Tony DeRigo talk about that shite from yesterday, and I think I might have been a little bit harsh on Jimbo. I know he's not here yet. And I also think sometimes I've maybe got too much of a boner for Farker. That's been my thought. That's been my thought process today. And yes, that's been my week so far. Listening to that horrific game last night. I know you've covered it on the 90 plus 15, so we don't have to talk about that too much. I'm just going to say eating a lot of fresh food because the Chinese people don't eat a lot of processed food, but I've got no idea what I've been eating, and I insist on using a knife and fork.
So you're not using chopsticks?
Nope, I insist on taking a knife and fork with me.
Can I go into something that's famous about Xi'an?
Is it the Terracotta Warriors?
It's not the Terracotta Warriors. It is, I believe, quite close to Wuhan.
Yes. Oh, God.
And
yeah.
the last time, Ricardo, you were there, well, not the last time, you've been there a few times, but
Yeah.
I think the first time you went to China, you were in Xi'an, and this was in, I believe, October, November time in 2019.
Correct.
And quickly after global pandemic. I think you might be patient X.
Yeah, it's possible.
Which is a worry for when you come back because
Yeah.
we're not starting COVID 24.
Well, your girlfriend's already said she's not going to see me for 10 business days. She put, I wanted to say to her to get off a fucking pompous high horse.
She might see you at the weekend. I'm absolutely delighted to inform our listeners that Jimbo, the true authentic voice of this podcast, has joined us to preview the QPR game. How are you doing? How did the client meeting go? Is everything okay?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm still in the job, luckily. Just about, yeah. Clinging on, mate. Clinging on.
So we're going to preview the QPR game. Ricardo, I know you've done a lot of research. Go for it.
Well, shall I give you my educated opinion of QPR? I can give you all the stats, but my first statement is they are, in one word, absolute dog shit. So I think it's going to be an easy victory for Leeds on Saturday. Now, for statistics, they have won only one game this season. They've drawn 7 and lost 6. In the last 5, they have drawn 3 and lost 2, and they are second bottom of the league. So statistically, they are worse than Plymouth. Now, I wasn't at the Plymouth game. Obviously, you guys were. I think there has to be a reaction from yesterday's performance, and I think the fans will get behind them, and I genuinely think it'll be a comfortable victory for Leeds. And looking at the QPR team, they just all look bang average. That's my overview for you. Don't want to go too much into any depths of analysis.
Tell you what,
Jim, before you do come in, please, Ricardo, please do go into the depths of analysis that you've done.
I've checked Football Insider, and I have. Shall I tell you the only thing I don't know is who the manager is? I looked at his name, didn't recognise it. But 14 games in, those stats don't lie, do they? You look at the possession stats, they're always less than the opposition. The only exception to that was against Sunderland. They had Bellingham sent off at the time. Jim, would you like to add some notes? Because I saw you put your hand up. Or do you want to go to the toilet?
No, I put my hand up because I'm hoping that their fifth choice goalkeeper plays because they've got 2 Leeds players in one. Matteo Salomon. There's the
random facts of the day.
Random bit of input from me.
The thing I was going to say is, which will be interesting, is you would think they are going to come to Ellen Road and they are going to play very defensive. And it will be interesting to see if we can break them down. Because if we can't, and I did make an apology a little bit earlier before you joined the call, Jim. I said I think I maybe give you a bit of a hard time about Farke, and I think sometimes maybe I'm too positive about him, because I think if we don't break them down, everyone knows he's not going to make any changes until 20 minutes to go. It's going to be the same old thing. Exactly, that is his style. So that's my only slight concern.
So he did get asked a question about this in his press conference today around time it takes to make substitutions, etc. And he said, you can't be like a flag in the wind. You have to stick to your beliefs. That's not us and not the principles. You're working the whole season to develop the game. Just because there's one unlucky result, you change your whole behaviour. I was pleased to see how dominant we were. That was his response to on changes and the substitute.
I fucking love Farke. Honestly, he's sensational. He's sticking to his beliefs.
Listen, I'll give you the whole he's sticking to his beliefs, right? I agree with you there. You've got to do that at certain points. But at what point do your beliefs make you so rigid that you just don't have a plan B? Because you need to have a plan B in some games. And I think he may be taking that a little bit out of context, because I'm guessing, I didn't hear it, but it's not as though people are asking for him to change. Just have an idea of who you're playing. And if you know someone's going to sit back, have a plan to overcome it rather than just sticking to the same thing. Doing the same thing, it's fine having 75% possession, but if it results in the same outcome of a boring game and you potentially lose, at some point you need to maybe deviate away from the beliefs and have an idea of a different approach.
Agree. Could I ask you a question? Is it a must-win on Saturday?
It's not a must-win in terms of like the overall league outcome, but considering where they are in the league and the fact that it's at home, from a fan perspective, yeah, we have to be winning that game just to stop unrest. Because can you imagine the fallout if we lose? We've just lost to Millwall, played similar to how we did against Bristol, and then we play someone second bottom with all the stats you've just given, and we lose at home. The fallout would be loud, very loud.
Agreed.
I'd just say that if we lose any game, the fallout tends to be quite loud on X. We were talking at the night plus 15. It seems like there's the Farke out brigade already here because we lost last night. We were talking about Byram and Bogle being swapped. Willie Nonto should get dropped. So I think there's always going to be fallout. I don't think it's season ending if we don't win, but I'd be surprised if there isn't a reaction.
Would you go home and punch Charlie if Leeds lose on Saturday?
I'm not going to condone domestic violence on this podcast, Ricardo. Just so you know, and just for our listeners' benefit, Charlie has just walked into the room. As Ricardo, you said, would you punch Charlie?
What's really interesting about that, Sam, is the look of fear in your eyes then. I knew before you even announced, I knew that she was there lurking in the shadows. So to be honest, Ricardo, I think I'm going to get twatted next time she sees you.
Yeah, well, she's not going to see me for 10 business days. She's already told me that. Yeah. Charlie, fuck off.
I've just told her to fuck off.
Yeah.
She's now looking at me through the window with a finger in the air. So you know where that's going to be stuck later, don't you? Right. Should we move on to some predictions for this game? Because I'm conscious that
concept time,
Ricardo, it is
midnight. I know I'm going to get no sympathy, but when we flew over here, we effectively had a night on a plane, so I had no sleep. So I've had 2 days and I missed one night's sleep. Yes, Jim.
Can I ask you a question? When you flew over there, Ricardo, was you slumming it in economy? Were you in economy by any chance?
No.
Or not? Okay, so I couldn't give a fuck about how tired you are, and neither could the listeners.
Just being honest, we're keeping it real. Anyway,
I think that's the opposite of keeping it real.
You're probably
exactly, yeah. You need to be a man of the people, Ricardo. None of this fucking business class lark. You need to raw dog it on the way back. Talking economy. No TV, no music, just straight faced for the whole flight back in economy.
If Leeds don't win on Saturday, that's what I promise you I will do. Okay, predictions. Right. I said QPR are worse than Plymouth statistically, and obviously that is factually correct. But I don't think it will be as easy a game. I think Leeds will win 2-0. If you look at Cardiff's stats over the last 5 games, I think the draws have all been nil. So
we're not playing Cardiff.
I've said Cardiff 3 times. I think I'm tired. I think I need to go and get the butler outside to come and pour me a stiff whiskey.
I think if you carry on, you'll be getting evicted from this episode.
I'll go for my prediction next then. So I think it's going to be similar to the Plymouth game, where I think we'll obviously dominate possession, take control of the game. And I'm hoping, like you, Ricardo, that we get an early goal to settle the nerves and then take charge and get a couple more goals to make it a little bit easy. Jimbo, what's yours?
So I don't think it'll be an easy game. I feel as though I don't know if you've mentioned previous to me joining about Chair. Obviously, Ilyas Chair always seems to have a good game against us, dangerous player. I know they've not been in the best form. I think we will win, but I'm going to go 3-1. I can see us potentially conceding. Maybe a scrappy goal, set piece, just like a bit of an unexpected goal, but I do think we'll put a few past them.
Cool. So 3-1, 2-0. Sorry, I didn't give a score prediction. I'm going to go for 3-0 Leeds.
I mean, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it?
This episode has been a little bit of a car crash, listeners. We've had Jimbo join late. We've had Ricardo now drop out from China. I'm guessing that's because his Wi-Fi has run out, and he did say he paid for some more, but I'm guessing his card was declined. So we're gonna move on to a little bit of listener engagement. Now, what I would say is Ricardo has told you all that emails are dead. Do not contact us on emails anymore because no one does. That's history, is what he normally says. However, we've had an email from Chris Pilarski. He says, "Hey fellas, catching up as I just found the pod. Listening to your thoughts on the church redevelopment expansion and agree it might sap the atmosphere a bit. And I also agree that atmosphere is down a bit from watching on the telly. I'm in the US, but been following since 2008 via Yorkshire radio back in the day. I think the atmosphere being down must be due to style of play being boring under Farke, and boring kills atmosphere. When we go up, Farke would be first out the door, followed by Biscuit Hands Melier." So that's Chris Pilarski from St. Louis, USA. Jim, man after your own heart, slagging off Melier, slagging off Farke, and talking about church.
Yeah, appreciate the email, obviously, from him. A little bit harsh on Biscuit Hands. He's probably got a point at certain points of the season. There has been. But yeah, we've said about the atmosphere, haven't we? We keep saying every single game the atmosphere is pretty poor. But obviously, great. Really thankful for the email. I think one of the things I just wanted to mention when you're talking through fan engagement, I'd just like to thank the 48,000 now Sunderland fans who on X got absolutely seething with my comments. There was a guy on there, so big shout out to a guy called Michael Graham. Looks like some form of journo, worst of the worst, lower than a snake's belly. Talking about 2-point average for Sunderland, get some 95 points and comfortably promoted. My simple comments back was that, except I doubt you'll end up with 2 points per game average. Got very lucky against us and didn't look that good, in all honesty. And the uproar and turmoil from that went on for 6 days, to the point where I think one of the days I had to recharge my phone about 5 times because I was just getting constant messages from the Sunderland faithful. So appreciate the banter.
The problem as well, Jim, is that if they do listen to every episode of the Falling Apart podcast, they will be able to locate you, track you down, and kill you.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. Just remember, Sunderland fans, it's all banter. I know you're all Geordies at heart. Keep it coming. We like the interaction. And thank you for your comments.
So on a serious point, if you do email us, we will read it out because no one emails us. If you message us on X and we find it funny, we will read it out. So keep the emails coming. Follow us on X at Falling Apart Pod. Jim will message you. He won't send you private messages unless you want to see his no, not going to go there. And I think, as I said at the start of this, that's about all for this episode. But if you do hang on, you will be able to listen to our 90+15 review of the Millwall game. So all that's left to say is thank you for listening. We will hope for a Leeds win against QPR, and we will see you for the 90+15 after the game.
See ya.
Ta-ra.
Welcome to the Falling Apart podcast.
Hello and welcome to the slightly later than usual Falling Apart podcast 90+15 instant-ish reaction to the Millwall Leeds game where Millwall beat us 1-0. You've got Sam and Jim today. Jim, I'm really hoping this doesn't last 15 minutes, as I would much prefer to completely forget about that game.
Yeah, you're not the only one, to be honest. Can I also say, is it like now customary, no matter who is hosting, to open up basically as though it's Ricardo?
Absolutely. Hello. We're just prepping for our career in show business.
Yeah, true.
Now, I do have a confession to make before we get into the game. I was on a train back. I wasn't actually too far from the den. I was working in Canary Wharf yesterday. Not I'm a big shot or anything like that.
Big buildings, yeah?
Big buildings. And I was on a train back from London at about 8 o'clock last night, so I didn't get to see the game. But I have watched the 3 minutes of Leeds United highlights or the 2 minutes of Millwall highlights, which I think was a good explanation of how the game panned out. But I'm not going to lie to you, I'm pretty happy that I missed the game last night.
You will be as well, because it was, let's just say it was a little bit of a drab affair, if I'm being completely honest. Also, do you not travel first class? Because surely I'd imagine you'd have had like an iPad, probably got your dodgy Fire Stick.
Shut the fuck up.
You could have quite easily watched it in the first class carriage.
I was one of those desperately scrolling Twitter to try and find any dodgy stream. But yeah, unfortunately, the Wi-Fi on LNER is shit. And my 4G is also shit, so the amount of tunnels you go through on the way back from London. So yeah, thankfully, it was not to be.
Okay, fair enough.
What I will say from the highlights, though, is, as I say, Leeds' highlights were 3 minutes. It only showed the Tanganga goal, and then everything else was Leeds. And the Millwall highlights were 2 minutes, which I think does say a lot in terms of there wasn't an awful lot from Millwall that game. But ultimately, they got what mattered, which was the goal and the win. What was your take on last night? Because I know you saw more of the game than I did.
In a word, absolute dog shit.
Is that 2 words or 1 word?
It depends. If you're illiterate, you might put dog and shit together and just class it as 1 word like me. But no, that I guess that's a little bit harsh. I wasn't overly confident going down there because I think London, over the last 20, 30 games, we've lost around 70% of them down in the capital. So that was always hanging over. And I think there's just a real lack of confidence in terms of consistency from us. Which team's going to turn up? Is it going to be the team that plays really well, has a load of chances and still doesn't win? Is it going to be the team that plays well and scores a few goals like what we saw at home the other week? Or is it going to be the team that turned up last night? Is it going to be the one that it's a very dull Bristol City type game, a load of possession, load of shots? But if I'm being completely honest, if you read the stats, you'd think, oh, we were unlucky. But actually, there was nothing in the game. It wasn't a good game to watch at all. I think in the first half, there was 2 relatively good chances that stand out to me. One for Brendan Aronson at the edge of the box, which was like a trickler into the keeper's hands. And then another one from Pirro, which he somehow managed to get a shot off with 3 defenders in front of him. But other than that, mate, it was exactly as I sort of expected it to go. I just didn't think that we'd lose. I thought worst case scenario, we'd get a point.
Yeah, I was scrolling Twitter last night, and in between all of the tweets about Donald Trump, there was a few tweets about this is typical of Farke. He's got these games in him. We'd have an amazing performance at the weekend, and then you can almost guarantee there's going to be a pretty dull performance following that up. So yeah, it's not shocking. What I'd also say is we didn't get to preview the Millwall game just because of the quick succession of games. Actually, if you look at how Millwall have been performing over the last few games, I think they've won 4 in a row now. They're not to be taken lightly. They are a pretty decent team. They're obviously very well organised, well set up, and they've been doing pretty well.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, they have. They've got the scalp of Burnley and now us. So they're no mugs whatsoever, and they've jumped, like you say, I think you just said they've jumped into the playoffs now, or
the 5th now, yeah.
So up into 5th. Decent team away from home, but again, it makes me pose the question: if you want to win this league, can you be as inconsistent in terms of performance level over the course of a whole season? It's not panic stations, but at the same time, that's probably 2 opportunities now to open a gap on the top. And I'm sure I remember us speaking about this. We didn't do the pod last season, but I think throughout the season, we spoke about this quite a bit, where we had opportunities to open up a gap and we didn't take them. And ultimately, at the end of the season, that's what led to us being in the playoffs and losing in the final.
Yeah, totally. Should we come on to the goal then? So again, I've just seen the highlights. So from what it was a long ball up from Millwall, a bit of a shock that they won the ball from a header in the box. came down to Tanganga, who I thought was a centre-half, which I might have got that wrong, who kind of put a bit of a toe punt at it and it went into the bottom right.
Well, he was playing right back last night, and for the most of the game, actually, and it pains me to say this, he had Nonto in his pocket because he's a very strong player, isn't he? And he was at Spurs that he was at, and he got a few games with Spurs when they had injuries, and he was touted to be one of the next big things, and it never really seemed to happen. So when he did go to Millwall, I was quite surprised that he'd not joined a team up at the top end of the Championship. But what I will say about the finish is, and it comes back to, you've said this now a couple of times on the pods, if we look at their stats, they had 3 shots on target. They had 25% possession. One of them 3 shots on target that they had, they scored from. And that's what punishes you in this league, isn't it? If we have all these chances, if we look at our stats, we had 14 shots and only 4 of them were on target.
Yeah. And I think they were all outside the box, weren't they? Or pretty much most of them were outside the box.
Yeah, exactly. Pass-wise, this is like, in terms of what we typically tend to do is we keep the ball a lot, but sometimes we have the odd game where there's no real substance behind it. Last night was that case. Millwall had 212 passes. We had 640. 88% of them were accurate. So a lot of passes with very little substance, and we got punished. So fair play to him. He slotted it away.
Another key moment of the game was the Perot offside goal. That was really small on my screen, but it looked really tight. Did you get a closer look at that? And I saw a bit on Twitter about whether it was or wasn't offside.
Well, without looking at all the different angles that you'd typically get with like VAR, it looked very close to me. It looked as though it could have been onside. And again, a big shout out to Pirro, because he had pretty much one opportunity and he scored it, albeit offside. But yeah, we can't. It's a big talking point, but at the same time, the performance just wasn't at the level that it should have been for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a couple of other things I think is pretty worth discussing. So I know we normally do man of the match, but it doesn't feel quite right to do man of the match. But I have seen some rumblings again on Twitter around whether Byram should be starting right back instead of Bogle. Also that Nonto was a little bit sluggish last night.
It just looked like Nonto looked like he was just trying a little bit too hard. Sometimes when you see, and I know it sounds weird to say that, but sometimes when you see people in a game and they're just trying to make something happen a little bit too much rather than being natural. He was trying, and like I say, he was up against Tanganga for most of the first half, didn't give him anything whatsoever. As for Bogle, it just wasn't a very good game for him. I know that people are going to be straight away on X and they're going to be putting tweets out saying, should he be starting, shouldn't he? Naturally, that's coming because Sam Byron has just had 2 very good games for us in his absence.
Definitely. And you see it as well, like all the Fark out brigade has come back as well. So yeah, it happens after every defeat.
It's the meltdown, isn't it?
It always is. And it's like the league is over. But I don't think we should look at it that way. As I say, Millwall are up to 5th in the league. They've won the last 4. So it was never going to be easy going down there on a Wednesday night and trying to get a result. The stats say that we should have definitely got something out of the game. But like you say, it's being able to put the ball in the back of the net is the key thing. Ricardo is actually in China at the moment. He's out for dinner as we're speaking right now. Is that your Trump impression?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to have some sort of Trump reference in this one because we've not spoke about it.
But he has texted me privately. Okay. You'll be pleased to know. And he said, make sure you rib Jim about saying that we're definitely going to win the league and now saying that we're not going to win the league. And he's highlighted a text that you sent. I actually can't see when you sent the text, but I'm guessing it was back before October. See now what October, lads. Come out of that with points and we're winning the league.
Can I just say it's a very fucking loose grab from him. He'd be better off just shutting the fuck up and enjoying it than trying to pick faults with that. And actually, the point was really valid. In October, our running in terms of games and people that we were playing was really tough. And I think we lost against Burnley. We beat Sheffield United. Do I think we're going to win the league? If you want my honest answer right now, unless something changes, I don't think over the course of the whole season. Because remember, we've already had so many curveballs already. We've had things like Solomon's slip. We've had the fact that Aronson was through one-on-one in the last minute after equalising. Things that we've spoke about previously. I worry that we're not going to have enough consistency to win this league. It's a tough league. And I feel like all these little opportunities that we're missing to pull away slightly before Christmas, which typically tends to be our hardest period of a season could come back to bite us.
Yeah.
Ricardo is not on the podcast, so he can just take his comments and shove them up his ass.
What I would say is we are hoping to record our main podcast at some stage today.
Yes.
I'd say Ricardo is out for dinner, and he goes to China each year for work, and he always gets absolutely arseholed when he's out for dinner. So I'm really hoping he comes on the podcast because he's going to make an absolute tit of himself.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. That'd be brilliant.
I suppose just to finish this then, so just looking at the table, so we are third with 26 points. Ahead of us are Sheffield United on 28 and Sunderland on 30. I don't know if you saw the games, but Sheffield United got a late winner away at Bristol City on Tuesday night, and Sunderland drew 0-0 last night away at Preston. So we're not a million miles away from the top two. Burnley in fourth have a game in hand on us, and they could go above us on goal difference. They're playing tonight against West Brom. And then, as I say, Millwall in fifth, I think arguably have got the best form in the league at the moment. And then Watford make up the last playoff place. I know if Tom was here, he'd say, it's too early to look at the table. But I think it's sometimes good just to see how we're tracking along.
Yeah, of course it is. And what's really positive for us is that come Saturday, which I know you'll touch on the main pod, we've got a second from bottom and haven't won a game in 5. So I'd say that's really positive, but we probably know what could potentially happen with that. But yeah, overall, on your comments around the table, we're not in a bad position, are we? It's just frustrating to see that we could have potentially been on like 32 points now if we'd have beat Bristol and won last night, 30 points if we'd have drawn last night, but plenty more games to go. We're only 14 games in.
Yeah.
To keep the faith. What I will say, though, is, and we've not touched on this, but did you hear Fark doesn't do himself any favours, really, in his press conferences after the games, does he?
He doesn't. But that's just the way he is. He's always that style, win, lose or draw.
He's like, I'm fine with what the result was like. I thought we had a really good first half, and it's like, well, what were you watching to think that? Just because we can string a bunch of passes together doesn't mean it was an amazing half.
Yeah. But I suppose if you're like me and you just watch the highlights and Fark's comments, it kind of rings true because you just see all Leeds and then one Millwall goal and then all Leeds again. So yeah, if you're a plastic fan like I am, that's what you get to see. Do you know what? I'm going to give an insight to listeners here because I was thinking, actually, it's felt like a fairly good running order for the podcast. And usually we kind of jump around. But I do actually want to jump around again because one thing that, again, I saw a lot on X last night was around corners. We had 12 corners to their 2. And again, there's a lot of hoo-ha about why can't we score from set pieces. Now, what I'd say is Millwall were a big team, so it was always going to be difficult, but it's been a common theme for many years now, hasn't it? But yeah, I'm just wondering if we can go to Arsenal and get their set piece coach so we can actually start bloody scoring from some of these opportunities. Well,
I mean, let's put a spin on that, Sam. If you were in your job right now, which I know you're second in line at one of the biggest companies in the world.
Shut the fuck up.
If you were in your job and delivering similar results that our set piece taker is delivering, you'd have been out of that door about 12 months ago. Because not just that, what free kicks can you remember us scoring barring Gruev's in the playoffs?
Exactly. And I go back to the likes of Eddie Lewis, Ian Hart. I mean, I'm guessing they weren't, but it felt like they were popping in free kicks all the time.
Yeah,
we just don't do that anymore.
No, we don't. And remember, we did have a set ball specialist with us under Sam Greenwood, who apparently was brilliant with set pieces. I think he scored a few set pieces since his life. And I can't remember even him doing anything. And it's not as though we're a small team. We've got the sexy pirate, big lad. Got the Welsh warrior as well. He's a big lad as well. We have got some half decent sized lads. We just can't seem to find them from any sort of set piece, can we?
Yeah. Maybe a feature for a main pod at some point in the future because the lack of goals from set pieces will hinder us.
Yeah, it will. I mean, it's the equivalent of going into Winston's and coming out with nothing in there.
What's Winston's?
No, I'm not too sure. I've just heard someone making the first.
Cool. I think that's enough from us.
Finish on widows.
Let's finish on Winston's. So yeah, thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch, reach out to us on X at Falling Apart Pod, and we'll be with you for the main pod, hopefully tomorrow morning.
Lovely.
Catch you soon.
It's all right.